Did you know that Hawaii is not in North America? Or that you've been lied to about what you can and can't see from space? Or how about this? What if we told you you may be wrong about how many continents exist in the world? Today, we'll dive deep into misinformation and flat-out wrong facts about geography that have been floating around for a long time. Here's 50 fake geography facts that everyone believes. So, let's start with fact number 50. Antarctica and the South Pole are not the same thing. Many people use the names Antarctica and South Pole almost interchangeably. However, they're not the same thing. Antarctica is one of the 7, well, maybe not actually 7 as you'll soon see, continents in the world, located at the bottom of the planet. And 7 countries lay claim to territory within it. The South Pole is within Antarctica, but it's not the entire landmass. It's the southernmost point of the Earth, the magnetic pole around which the Earth spins. Fact number 49. There are actually 4 South Poles. Scratch that. Apparently, a lot of what we know about the South Pole is incorrect, including the fact that there's not just one. There's the geographic South Pole, the point where the Earth's axis meets the crust, the geomagnetic South Pole, where the Earth's geomagnetic field intersects the Earth's surface, which is not the same place as the axis, the magnetic South Pole, where the magnetic field intersects the crust, and the inaccessible South Pole, the furthest place on Antarctica from the shoreline. Fact number 48. You can't see the Great Wall of China from space. Everyone knows there's only one man-made structure you can see from space, the Great Wall of China, except you can't. In fact, you can't see any man-made structure from space with the naked eye. So how did this rumor get started? Well, most likely because the International Space Station, the ISS, shared images of the Great Wall of China taken from space. However, those images were taken with a powerful zoom lens. The astronauts couldn't see the wall otherwise. Even using the zoom lens, structures like the Houston airport are visible way before the Great Wall, since the wall is very long but very thin, and also blends into the surrounding area due to its color and texture. Fact number 47. Greenland is much smaller than Africa. Most people get this fact wrong, and for that, you can thank the Mercator projection most maps use. Not only is Greenland, at around 836,000 square miles, nowhere near Africa in size, it's even smaller than Africa's biggest country, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, at almost 906,000 square miles. Because of the way the projection works, the DRC looks much smaller than it is, while Greenland looks giant. You'll soon see why. In reality, the northern island is 1/8 the size of South America, and 14 times smaller than Africa. And on that note, fact number 46. Africa is much bigger than you think. To understand this, we have to talk more about how Mercator maps work. They essentially flatten out the globe, and were originally used by navigators to plot their course, as it made lines of latitude and longitude exactly parallel. But they fall short when trying to get an accurate idea of landmass size. Land near the poles appears much larger than land near the equator. That becomes obvious when you learn that Africa is 11.7 million square miles, meaning it can fully fit both Russia and Canada, with room left to cram in Iceland, the UK, and all of Scandinavia. Fact number 45. Finland is not part of Scandinavia. Most people look at northern continental Europe as being Scandinavia, but Finland isn't actually part of this region, though it is part of the Nordics. That's because even though Finland borders Sweden and has some cultural similarities, it's linguistically and ethnically different from its Scandinavian neighbors, Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish all come from similar Germanic roots, while Finnish comes from a completely separate, less comprehensible language family known as Uralic. Which is why, when you ask Finns to teach you a word in Finnish, most will reply, why? Fact 44. The Nile may not be the longest river in the world. The Nile River, which runs through 11 African countries, is usually considered the longest river in the world. But many scientists and geographers are now disputing this claim. Turns out, mapping a river is harder than you might think. But after a 14-day expedition by Brazilian scientists in 2007, the director of science at the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics, Guido Heli, says the case is closed. The Amazon is the longest river, even though it wins by only around 60 miles. It's 4,225 miles long, compared to the Nile's 4,160 miles. While other scientists do dispute this claim, one thing is clear: the Nile is still not the undisputed champion of rivers. Fact number 43. Europe's tallest peak is not Mont Blanc or the Matterhorn. The tallest mountain in Europe, many think, must be one of the most famous ones, perhaps Mont Blanc or the Matterhorn, both of which are located in the Alps. However, neither of those are the tallest, not by a long shot. Mont Blanc is just under 15,800 feet tall, and the Matterhorn is around 14,700 feet tall. The big boy of Europe is Mount Elbrus, located in Russia, reaching up to nearly 18,500 feet in altitude. Many people don't know it, partly because of confusion surrounding where Russia itself actually is, Europe or Asia. But Mount Elbrus is fully in Russia's European side. Speaking of, fact number 42. There is no agreed-upon line between Europe and Asia. If you ask geographers if the countries of the Caucasus, Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan, sit in Europe or Asia, they will likely answer yes. It turns out there's a lot of confusion on what line divides Europe or Asia, as they share the same landmass. Many cartographers make the Ural Mountains in Russia the eastern border of Europe and Asia, then follow the Emba River in Kazakhstan down to the Caspian Sea. Some cartographers put the line on the border of Kazakhstan instead. Others still put it on the Ural River. Then it continues, either through the Sea of Azov to the Kerch Strait, or south to the port of Baku, and across the Caucasus Mountains and over into Kerch again. In sum, the distinction between Europe and Asia isn't so clear-cut. Fact number 41. Egypt is not completely in Africa. Though most people identify Egypt as a country in Africa, it's not fully within the continent. The Suez Canal separates Asia and Africa, and though Egypt is located mostly in Africa, its famous Sinai Peninsula is on the other side of the canal, and therefore located in Asia. It's far from the only country to be straddling two continents, though. Fact number 40. Part of Kazakhstan is in Europe. This leads us to another interesting tidbit that you might get wrong. According to most, even if not all cartographers, the part of Kazakhstan west of the Emba River is not actually in Asia. Most famous as the home of Borat, Kazakhstan is widely considered an Asian country, but a lot of geographers would put the westernmost regions of it, including the large parts of West Kazakhstan and Adirau, in Europe. And continuing on Europe-Asia confusion, fact number 39, Russia is not European, or Asian for that matter. Depending on where you went to school, you may have learned that Russia is a European country or an Asian country. But the fact is, Russia is not totally European or Asian. Many experts say that its culture and history make it more European, but most of its landmass still lies in Asia. Russia spreads across 11 time zones, yet doesn't have the most in the world, as you'll soon see, across both continents. So most geographers consider it a Eurasian country. Fact number 38. The world doesn't necessarily have 7 continents. If you grew up going to school in an English-speaking country, or most of Europe and Asia, you probably learned that the world has 7 continents. Though this is the most widely accepted model of thinking about world geography, it's not the only one. Depending on where you learned geography, you may think the world only has 5, or even just 4 continents, and those are totally legitimate models as well. Some European countries have a 6-continent model: Africa, America, Antarctica, Asia, Australia/Oceania, and Europe. Other countries teach 5 continents: Africa, Europe, Asia, America, and Oceania, Australia, excluding Antarctica altogether. And yet other people argue that only land masses separated by water should count as continents, meaning there's just 4: Afro-Eurasia, America, Antarctica, and Australia. Fact 37. Holland is not just another name for the Netherlands. Many people call the Netherlands Holland, believing it's just an older name, or perhaps an alternate name for the northwestern European country. But while that may be the case in a few other languages, in English, Holland is actually a region within the Netherlands. 2 of the Netherlands' 12 provinces are called North Holland and South Holland, Noord-Holland and Zuid-Holland. So why did the name of just 2 regions become interchangeable with the country as a whole? Well, that's probably because the country's most populated and famous cities, Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and The Hague, are all located within these 2 regions. Fact number 36. Great Britain and the United Kingdom are not the same. Does someone have an English accent or a British accent? Many Americans and other outsiders use terms that apply to this island interchangeably, but they're not the same thing. Just for fun, try calling a Scotsman English. See how it goes for you. In the same vein, Great Britain and the United Kingdom do not refer to the same landmass. The United Kingdom is a country made up of 4 separate regions: England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Great Britain, on the other hand, refers only to the island that includes England, Scotland, and Wales, leaving out the Emerald Isle entirely. Fact number 35. Iceland is not icy. This mistake is understandable to make. After all, ice is right there in the name. But this false reputation is actually the result of one man's staggering lack of curiosity. In the 9th century, a Norseman by the name of Hrafna Floki landed on the island, went up a mountain in the West Fjords, and saw ice in the fjord itself. He then decided the land shall be named Iceland, and called it a day. However, the coasts of Iceland are pretty ice-free, and even though there are glaciers on the island, most of the country is green. Fact 34. Lagos is not the capital of Nigeria. Even geography nerds get this one wrong. The actual capital of Nigeria is Abuja, so why do so many people think it's Lagos? First off, it used to be the capital, so there's that. But second, Lagos continues to be the biggest city in Nigeria by far and one of the biggest in the world, with an estimated population of 15.5 to 21 million people, compared to Abuja's 4.2 million. However, the capital was moved to Abuja in 1991, partly because Abuja was closer to the center of the country than the coastal Lagos, and also because of an amusement park. That's right, Abuja is near Magic Land Abuja, formerly known as Wonderland, the first amusement park ever built in Nigeria, and officials wanted the capital to be near it. Fact 33. The Sahara Desert is not the world's largest desert. The largest desert in the world is in a place you might not expect: Antarctica. In fact, it is Antarctica itself, as the Antarctic polar desert spans 5.5 million square miles over the entire continent. Most people imagine deserts to be hot, dry places devoid of plant life, but that definition is only partly true. Heat has nothing to do with naming some place a desert. According to Webster's dictionary, a desert is classified as arid land with usually sparse vegetation. So, Antarctica absolutely qualifies. Fact number 32, the Sahara is also not the world's driest desert. You know what, maybe the Sahara isn't as impressive as we've all been led to believe. Turns out, it's not the world's largest desert, and believe it or not, it's not even that dry. At least, it's not compared to the Atacama Desert in Chile. Outside of the poles, the Atacama Desert is the driest place on Earth, receiving less than 0.04 inches or 1 millimeter of precipitation per year. Some parts of the desert haven't seen water in over 500 years. That means that the last time it rained was a few years after Columbus landed in the New World. A man who has one of the craziest fake geography facts associated with him, as you'll soon see. In comparison, the Sahara Desert gets an average of 3 inches a year, a positive deluge compared to the Atacama. Fact 31. Deserts aren't necessarily sandy. We've already established that deserts can be icy, large landmasses like Antarctica, but even deserts with hot climates aren't necessarily full of sand and dunes. People just think so because most photos of deserts feature miles of endless photogenic dunes. Rocky scrubland is rarely as pretty to photograph and share with the world. But some, like the Atacama we just mentioned, have mostly rocky or stony terrain. Deserts around the world can also feature salt flats and other non-sandy landscapes. As long as they're arid, they're still deserts. Fact 30. Everest is not the tallest mountain in the world. Turns out, some geography facts aren't really straightforward. Depending on how you measure it, Everest is not the tallest mountain in the world, though it is the tallest when measuring the height difference from sea level, around 29,000 feet. Two other mountains beat it by other measurements. The first is Mauna Kea, which is taller than Everest measured from base to tip, though a lot of it is underwater. The other one, which fewer people know about, is Mount Chimborazo in Ecuador. Despite Chimborazo being nearly 8,500 feet lower than Everest, its location on the Equatorial Bulge means its summit sits almost 4,000 miles from the Earth's center. That's 1.3 miles more than Everest, making Chimborazo closer to space. Number 29. The Earth is not a sphere. Globes usually depict the Earth as a perfect sphere. However, that's not actually our planet's shape. The Earth is an oblate spheroid, or ellipsoid, meaning it's slightly flatter at the poles. That happens mostly because of the planet's rotation. The force of it causes the ends near its axis to flatten. Actually, the shape is continuing to slowly change over time, but not in any drastic ways. However, most globes are still perfectly round, just because it's easier to depict the Earth that way for educational purposes. Fact 28. Most of Canada's population lives near its southern border, which is why several major Canadian cities, Vancouver, Winnipeg, Montreal, and of course, Toronto, are within 100 miles of the US-Canadian border. Though Toronto is Canada's most populated and well-known city, it isn't actually the capital of Canada. That would be Ottawa. The reason Queen Victoria made it the country's capital in 1857 is because it was in a location that could be easily defended between Quebec and Ontario. And at the time, those were the Canadian colony's only two provinces. Fact 27. Geneva is not the Swiss capital. Though it's famous for things like chocolate, watches, and conventions on human rights, Geneva is not actually the Swiss capital. In 1848, the Swiss parliament voted to make Bern the capital, to avoid giving too much power to the country's economic powerhouse, Zurich. So if Bern is the capital and Zurich is the moneymaker, why do so many people think Geneva is the capital? Well, that's probably because many international bodies, like the UN and the Red Cross, have their European headquarters in Geneva, making it the Swiss city most referenced in news and media. Fact 26. Antarctica isn't as big as you think. Though Antarctica may look massive on a map, it's smaller than most people think. In fact, you can only fit the US and Mexico inside it before you run out of room. But since the Mercator map disproportionately distorts countries by the poles, it makes sense that it would distort one continent on a pole the most. Fact 25. The Mississippi is not the longest river in the US. Though the Mississippi River is one of the US's most, if not the most important commercial waterway, as it flows through almost the entire country from north to south, it's actually not the longest river in the US. That would be the Missouri River, which is a tributary of the Mississippi and yet 200 miles longer. The US Geological Survey lists the Missouri as 2,540 miles long, and the Mississippi River as 2,340 miles long. Fact 24. South Africa actually has 3 capitals, and none of them are Johannesburg. We can't blame people for making this particular mistake, as South Africa's capital situation is pretty unique. Since Johannesburg has the biggest urban population in South Africa, many people think it's the capital. But in fact, South Africa has 3 capitals divided between the legislative capital in Cape Town, the judicial capital in Bloemfontein, and the executive capital in Pretoria. The country divided the capitals in 1910, when the Union of South Africa was formed. Pretoria and Bloemfontein had both already been capitals of the previous Boer provinces, the Orange Free State and Transvaal, and a parliament had existed in Cape Town since colonial times, so it just made sense to make it a legislative capital. Fact number 23. Maine is not the US's easternmost state. Looking at a map of the US, this fact seems insane. How can Maine not be the easternmost state? It's east of everything else. But due to the weird division of the eastern and western hemispheres, the westernmost edge of Alaska is actually located in the eastern hemisphere next to Russia. It's called Semisopochny, and you'll find it 10 miles west of the 180th meridian, making it the US's easternmost state. Fact 22. Hawaii is not in North America. Even though Hawaii is part of the United States, it's also the only state that's not actually located in North America. Instead, Hawaii is part of the subregion of Polynesia, which is located in Oceania. Oceania includes, among other areas, Micronesia, Melanesia, Australia, and New Zealand. Hawaii is related to other Pacific islands not only geographically, but culturally and linguistically as well. The Hawaiian language's closest relatives are the Tahitian, Tongan, Samoan, and Maori languages. Fact 21. Europe is not exactly east of the US. There's a misconception that Europe is pretty much due east of the US. People believe that for two reasons. One, because our mental maps are rarely accurate, and two, because even in Central and Northern Europe, the weather isn't that extreme. Therefore, people think that the Northern European countries roughly correspond to the Northern US states in latitude. However, London is at 51.5 degrees north latitude, making it further north than the entire contiguous United States, even though it doesn't get nearly as cold there as in Maine or Minnesota in the winter. And a warm, sunny destination like Athens is almost the same latitude as Louisville, Kentucky. You think you may know the reason the weather in Europe is much milder than in North America overall, but it turns out that's also a fake geography fact. Fact number 20. All the way back in 1855, M.F. Maury wrote a book called The Physical Geography of the Sea, which popularized the idea that the Gulf Stream warms up Europe. Since then, it's been confidently repeated in conversations and printed in articles, and yet, it's wrong. The much bigger temperature difference has to do with the interaction of atmospheric circulation and the Atlantic Ocean's seasonal storage and release of heat, not the Gulf Stream itself, which does play a minor part. Fact number 19. The world actually has 5 oceans. When most people are asked to name the world's oceans, they list the Atlantic, the Pacific, the Indian, and the Arctic Oceans. However, there's another ocean out there that most people forget, partly because it's the newest one on the list, the Southern Ocean. It's not a small one either. It covers 10 to 15% of the world's ocean mass. It surrounds Antarctica, below 60 degrees latitude. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, established the existence of the Southern Ocean in 1999, and it was used in official documentation. However, the National Geographic Society didn't officially recognize the Southern Ocean until June of 2021. Fact 18. Australia is not the world's biggest island. Though it's sometimes called the island continent, Australia isn't considered an island by most geographers, who think of continents and islands as separate things. According to Britannica, the definition of an island is a landmass entirely surrounded by water, and yet also smaller than a continent. Therefore, most geographers consider Greenland to be the biggest island in the world. Oh, and speaking of, fact number 17, Greenland is not its own country. Though according to most polls, Greenlanders would like it to be independent, Greenland is not, in fact, its own country. It's part of the Kingdom of Denmark, even though Greenland is about 20 times the size of Denmark. However, it only has a population of 57,000, compared to Denmark's 5.95 million. But over the years, Greenland has acquired a lot of autonomy from Denmark, increasingly taking the lead in its own issues, especially domestic policy. However, Denmark still controls Greenland's defense, security, and foreign policy. Fact 16. Most of Africa is actually above the equator. As we said earlier, people generally don't have the best mental maps of the world, which is why one of the biggest geography mistakes people make is thinking that most of Africa lies in the southern hemisphere, when the truth is exactly the opposite. Only 33% of African land is located below the equator. However, more people in Africa live in the southern rather than the northern hemisphere, partly because the Sahara covers a lot of the continent north of the equator, and it's a very sparsely populated place. Fact 15. Lakes are not the biggest source of fresh water. We assume lakes hold most of our freshwater, but it turns out around 3/4 of all our freshwater is locked in ice caps and glaciers. Although a tiny percentage of the Earth's water is fresh to begin with, 97.2% is found in oceans and seas, 2.1% of the world's total water is in glaciers, while less than 1% is in lakes and rivers combined. That means glaciers are not only the largest reservoir of fresh water, but the second largest reservoir of water in total. Fact number 14. The country that spans the most time zones isn't Russia. Given how endlessly long Russia is, you may think that it spans the most time zones in the world, as the country has 11 time zones total, but you would be wrong. The country that actually spans the most time zones is France. With a total of 12 time zones, it beats Russia by 1. You may be confused and looking at a map of Europe right now, but you'd have to look beyond that continent to see all of France, including its many overseas islands and territories. They range from Tahiti in UTC-10 time to Wallis and Futuna in UTC+12 time. When St. Pierre and Miquelon off the coast of Canada observe daylight saving time, it actually increases France's total time zones to 13. Fact number 13. China does not have the world's largest population. Everyone in school learns that China is the country with the biggest population in the world. We all learned that because, well, it was true, at least for a very long time. But if you're going to school today, you'll learn that India has officially replaced China as the most populated country in the world, with 1.46 billion people. The change happened in April of 2023. Even though India has had declining birth rates for a while now, China's population growth is not only slowing down, but actually started to drop, due mostly to the effect of China's one-child policy. Fact number 12. Places in Antarctica do observe different times. A common geography myth is that Antarctica doesn't have time zones. It seems to make sense on some level. The continent is all the way on the southern end of the world. Well, maybe not, as you'll soon find out. But do time zones even count there? While the continent isn't officially divided into time zones, the research stations there do observe different times. However, they don't always make sense geographically. Some research stations observe the time of the country they're closest to, while others observe the time of the country that operates them, to help them follow their suppliers' or head office's working hours. Fact number 11. The North and South Pole are artificial constructs. Okay, hear us out. Even though magnetic poles do naturally exist, which one is north and which one is south is an entirely arbitrary decision that humans made. And they didn't always place the North and South Poles where we do today. Ancient Egypt, for example, had them reversed. But since the majority of the world's landmass and population today sits in the Northern Hemisphere, we put the Northern Hemisphere on top and call the pole on top of it the North Pole. But this has no basis in anything natural. After all, the universe has no cardinal directions, so there's nothing to say that the North Pole is on top compared to the rest of our galaxy. Fact 10. New Zealand is not the closest country to Australia. Australia and New Zealand are always shown next to each other on maps, far removed from the rest of the world in their little corner of the globe. However, next to each other is relative when distances are as large as they are in that part of the world. At its closest distance from Australia, between New Zealand's South Island and Tasmania, New Zealand is around 930 miles away from the country. On the other hand, the coast of Papua New Guinea is only 93 miles away from Australia's northern coast. However, Australia's Saibai Island, located in the Torres Strait, is just under 2.5 miles from Papua New Guinea. Fact 9. Countries on the equator aren't always hot. People tend to believe any place located on the equator is automatically hot, since that's where the sun is strongest. However, this type of thinking fails to take altitude into consideration, and it turns out a lot of places on the equator are pretty high up. Quito, Ecuador, which sits just a hair below the equator at 0 degrees 13 minutes and 12 seconds south, is located at 9,300 feet in altitude. The city's average temperature is a long-sleeve shirt needing 64 degrees Fahrenheit. At the top of Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, just 3 degrees below the equator, temperatures plummet to below freezing. In the Andes that run through the equator in Colombia, you can actually find a few glaciers left at the top. Fact number 8. Central American countries are actually part of North America. Many people group the Central American countries south of Mexico as part of South America. Though they are part of Latin America, bearing some similarities with their South American neighbors, mostly Spanish-speaking plus cultural ties, countries like Panama, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Belize, El Salvador, and Costa Rica are still in North America. South America, for those who count the Americas as two separate continents, doesn't start until Colombia. The dividing line between Panama and Colombia is widely considered to be the division between the two continents. Fact number 7. Portugal is not a Mediterranean country. Though Portugal is next to Spain and on the same latitude and same region as other Mediterranean countries, like Italy and Greece, it's not actually a Mediterranean country. No part of Portugal borders the Mediterranean Sea. Instead, it's entirely surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean. The Mediterranean Sea technically ends at the Strait of Gibraltar, which separated Spain from Morocco. Any water west of that, which includes the water south of Portugal, is considered the Atlantic Ocean. Fact number 6. Venice is not the only or even the biggest city of canals. Venice is one of the world's top tourist destinations, partly thanks to its unique design. A city on the water, where you can get around via canals rather than roads. However, it's not the world's only or even the biggest city of canals. 2 other European cities have more canals than Venice. One is Birmingham, which has 35 miles of canals, more than Venice's 30.7 miles. Though even most Birmingham residents would argue that Venice's canals are the more romantic of the two. Amsterdam beats both cities with 60 miles of canals, making it the most watery city in the world. Fact number 5. The Statue of Liberty isn't in New York, or is it? Surprisingly, the answer is a little muddier than you might think. Though Lady Liberty has long been associated with New York City, an iconic landmark of the Big Apple, it's actually closer to New Jersey. Not only that, it's in New Jersey's territorial waters. However, the island it's on, Liberty Island, is part of New York, and the whole thing is administered on federal land by the National Park Service. So both states end up with a reasonable claim. Fact number 4. You can see Russia from Alaska. There are parts of Alaska from which you can see Russia quite easily. There are 2 islands, called Little Diomedes and Big Diomedes Islands, which are US and Russian owned respectively, that are only separated by a couple of miles. But beyond those islands, there are also inhabited parts of Alaska, namely on Cape Prince of Wales, where you can see Siberia just 50 miles away. Fact number 3. The US isn't bordered by 2 oceans. In school, particularly in the US itself, many people learned that one of the reasons the US is geographically protected from many wars and invasions is because it finds itself with an ocean on either side, the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans. Many students then walk away, thinking the US only borders 2 oceans. But actually, there are 3 oceans that border the US: the Pacific to the west, the Atlantic to the east, and the Arctic Ocean north of Alaska. Fact number 2. There aren't exactly 195 countries in the world. If you're going by unanimously recognized UN countries and observer states, then yes, there are 195 countries in the world. But not everyone agrees on this number, and for that reason, when you're taught how many countries exist in the world, the number could vary widely depending on where you're learning it. There are at least 6 additional countries in the world with partial recognition. These include mostly recognized ones like Kosovo, recognized by over 100 countries, and areas that almost everyone denies, like the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, recognized only by Turkey. And finally, fact number 1. People didn't think the Earth was flat before Columbus. Many schools actually teach that in Columbus's time, people thought the world was flat, and if he tried to sail around it, he would fall right off the edge. But the first person to discover the Earth was round was Aristotle, who lived in the 4th century BC, almost 2 millennia before Columbus set foot on a ship. So no one in Columbus's time thought he was going to slide off the Earth. They just thought he might die from a lack of supplies before reaching Asia, a much more realistic concern, not knowing he was going to hit North America first. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. Really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MathPack.